I remember following Yandere Simulator back since its early threads in 2014. It was fun following this game and just watching it blow up in popularity, but after a while I just sort of lost interest and stopped following the game. That was until last year when it caught my eye again with all the drama surrounding it. There's been tons of videos focusing on the developer's past and his poor development practices, one of which seems to be longer than most movies. There's even been a Twitter account dedicated to highlighting every sort of thing that came out before Yandere Simulator, and for an entire week people made a game of seeing how fast they could get banned from the Discord server.
Fuck!
Now I won't lie, the Discord stuff did make me laugh, but beyond that I haven't heard much talk about the game recently. It's kind of what made me want to revisit it, since outside of messing around with one build back in like 2016 for like a few minutes, I honestly never played the game fully. I haven't kept up with much of the development either, so I'm basically heading into the game with a fresh mindset, only trying to focus on the game itself. And while I can safely say the game definitely has me interested again, there's definitely a huge amount of problems I'll go into. I won't be talking about the story a lot though, since there's not much of it in the builds I played. From what I've got the introduction, it's a standard anime romance with a mood similar to what you'd get from something like Postal or Manhunt. There's tapes hidden around the school that you could get more info from, and there's the odd plot important NPC, but beyond that it doesn't really feel like anything major right now. As is, the game is more of a sandbox to just mess around in. Now the game itself is a stealth game mixed with live sim elements. You start the game at home on Monday before heading off to school where you'll spend most of your time, and despite some tutorial pop-ups you're basically set loose to mess around in the build. There's not much of a penalty for getting a game over besides restarting the day, so the game really wants you to experiment here. Ideally your first time around you'll want to look for a club owner, since beyond some cosmetic bonuses, you'll also get certain perks exclusive to their club, some of which are tailored for certain playstyles. Or you can head off to class to level up your skills and figure out which options work for you and which ones aren't even implemented in the game yet. Beyond that, you're free to explore at your leisure with time passing very slowly. You could pick up a sharp object and go on a rampage, or you could be a budding socialite and compliment random students, explore the school and find out what Easter eggs there are, or you could be like me and figure out which areas don't have proper collision and uncover glitches along the way. Once school is over, you could wait it out and participate in a club activity, or you could head straight home where more options become available at night. You could read manga, play some video games, use your computer, or you could head straight to town and work for a part-time job in a minigame that reminds me of something straight out of No More Heroes 2. The town seems to have been recently implemented, so outside of finding an odd Easter egg, working, or buying stuff, there's not a lot to do right now, but despite its small size it feels like there could be tons more added on later. Over the 6 or so hours I spent on Yandere Simulator, it's easy to see why the game has a huge following now. It appeals enough to anime fans and Let's Players, but it still feels like there's been proper effort put in at times, enough to rival some smaller releases. Despite how ugly and basic the environments are, the game has a nice attention to detail for a project made on such a small budget. At times I'm reminded of games like Shenmue or Bully, where characters seem to have their own routines that they follow, making it feel like you're part of this living world. I've personally just had fun just taking it slowly, gathering more information on characters and messing around in the school, doing side missions, memorizing item placement and character routines. There's a solid groundwork in place and it'd be interesting to see how it plays out in the final game. You could technically get a feel for this in the game's mission mode, which has you taking out a random target by any means necessary. If you want, you could even add difficulty modifiers, like killing the target without leaving any witnesses, getting rid of your target in a set time limit, or you can introduce a nemesis that stalks you throughout the entire mission and will hunt you down if you aren't careful. Despite how slow they move, it definitely adds tension knowing that you're being hunted the whole time, and it'd be interesting to see a variant of this in the final game. Despite the build's small file size, there's certainly a ton of content to mess around with here. It sounds like I have nothing but positives to say so far, and Yandere Simulator certainly has a ton of things going for it. But despite that, it still has a ton of problems, with the most notable being the performance. Now it's still playable, whether using a controller or a mouse and keyboard, it still plays fine to where it doesn't hurt the experience, but it doesn't run all that well considering the lackluster visuals on display. I like to use the locker area at the start of a new day as almost a benchmarking area of sorts, just to test out performance with a wide range of different settings, and it's mostly the same no matter what. I've tried running it maxed out and then on the lowest possible settings at 1080p and then dropping down the resolution to 720p, but it really doesn't change much. This is just how the game runs, except now it looks worse. The only setting right now that makes a huge difference is enabling shadows, as it can bring down the frame rate down to the mid-20s. Now my PC isn't a beast of a rig, but it can run a wide variety of games at a mixture of medium to high settings, some of which have ray tracing too, so these performance issues are disappointing to see right now. Now the performance only really becomes an issue when you use a time skip feature, as the game starts to feel like a slideshow at this point. It doesn't seem to be using any more of my PC than usual, so I'm not quite sure what's going on here beyond poor optimization. Another glaring fault I have right now are the load times, which certainly need more improvement. I'm playing the game with the installer option on an SSD, and the time it takes to get into the school environment takes longer than any point in the game. It's far worse in the mission mode though, where loading into the mode and then into the mission feels like it takes upwards of a minute. Now restarting the mission doesn't take as long, but it certainly interrupts the flow of the game. And I don't want to get into it since the game is fairly complex and the topic has been beaten to death, but the game's development is fairly slow. I've been waiting on the game's first rival to be properly implemented before making this video, but it looks like Asana is being held back to fix and improve other aspects of the game, like fixing bug problems and improving the animations as seen recently. Now, both as a game and as a one-man production, Yandere Simulator is fairly complex, and it wouldn't be the first indie game to spend a long time in development, but I still feel like there's enough content here that really doesn't need anything more added on right now. Personally, I just want to see the rival be implemented right now, as right now the game works on a set deadline, but with no end goal, all the game is right now is just a sandbox, and it has been for years. Besides that, all I really have left to say are just minor gripes with the game. While I certainly enjoyed the process of trial and error and learning how the game works, I feel like an actual tutorial or training mode would still be nice to ease newer players into it. Now it doesn't need to be anything major, it could just look like a random test area with some weapons in place and some NPCs wandering around for the player to test out weapons or certain elimination techniques, as there's a ton of options that the game never really tells you about. I'm not the type of wanting to go through every single update video or blog that comes out just to see what's been added, so even adding something like a glossary of techniques in game would be a nice compromise. And while I said the game really doesn't need any more content right now, there's still some bits that feel like they could be easily removed, like the game's version of Discord. It's hard to see anything really come from this at all. There's also side quests that don't feel like they offer anything important in terms of rewards beyond the one castle minigame you could play. I'd like for the rewards to be important, like giving info to befriend or blackmail rivals and make the game easier. And maybe have an icon over an NPC's head or a marker put somewhere on the map just to know where the side quests are, as right now you could just sort of wander around and not really find anything important. But again, this game is still in development, so that's a complaint that doesn't really matter right now. But yeah, right now that's Yandere Simulator. It's promising, but still has a long ways to go. It's definitely not as bad as I've heard in some circles, but with the few problems it has right now, I'm not sure I'll be interested to follow the game's development all the way through. Right now it seems like the kind of game I'll probably pick up years down the road when it eventually releases on Steam during a summer sale or something. But hey, right now it's free. If it interests you, I still think you should go ahead and try it. Because even in its somewhat messy state, there's still a compelling product here if you're willing to look past all the baggage. It's definitely not for everyone, but if you like anime games and have a few hours to kill, you could do far worse than just play Yandere Simulator.